Welcome to Software Product Management Overview. Here are the contents. We begin with what is a product. A product is anything that a business sells that solves a market problem or addresses a customer's need or desire. It can be a tangible thing such as a doorbell camera, or it can be intangible such as the recording from the doorbell camera. And it can also be a service. For example, if your doorbell comes with an emergency bell that you can press to call the police. Now, the product can also be an input into another product. For example, in Airbnb, where you sell temporary lodging, you can also provide a product such as a search that helps you search the right lodging. It can also be an add-on to an existing product such as an emoji on Telegram. Often it is a mixture of a bunch of stuff. So your iPhone is a tangible thing that you can buy, and it contains also an intangible operating system, the iOS, that comes with some kind of service such as the iCloud that allows you to back up your photographs, and also a way for you to download other apps on the App Store, which is an input and add-on. Remember that people are more interested in the results of the product, not the product itself. So understand that when you want to know what a product is. Product management. Broadly speaking, there are three categories in product management: business, technology, and customer. In customer, we need to understand what to build. You need to empathize with the user to understand their problem, their desires, their needs, their wants, and the value you can create for them. We will cover user experience here to do user research to understand and to test these requirements. Then we will need to build it. Particularly, we're going to focus on IT. We'll look at process, agile methods, the tools that you will use, the process on testing and maintaining and supporting the tools, the product that you are building. Lastly, we will focus on how to grow the IT business to satisfy the customer needs so that you can turn a profit. And we will also learn how to continue to grow and when to sunset a product. As most of you are CS students, we will do UX and technology in a revision manner, and we will focus on the business from ground up. And this is product management. In product management, we need to plan a strategy. In the inbound, we need to develop and tie that to the strategy. In the outbound, we need to sell based on the strategy we have. We will focus on all these topics, subtopics listed in this slide. And the product manager will plan this using a roadmap, and the product owner or designer will develop and build this. Sometimes the product owner is the same person as the product planner. Other times it could be the product development manager, which is different from the product manager. And lastly, the product marketing. And this product marketing can be the sales, the marketing manager, which also can be the product manager. This course started from the International Software Product Management Association framework. So from this framework, there is a textbook, and the course will continue with this using this textbook. However, a lot of the examples and topics that we will cover in this textbook are based on industry and the latest topics in the industry. Let's understand the skills and competency required from a product manager. A product manager needs to have these 7 skill sets. And depending on the career level that you are in, your position, you may understand each of these skill sets in different depth. For example, if you are in strategic thinking, there are different requirements based on your level of your career path. You need to be able to communicate, a very important skill, to collaborate with different parts of the companies and different professions and different skill sets and jargons that they use. You need to understand technical details in different parts of the company. You need to pay attention to different details and maintain quality, as well as be able to empathize and do user research, or at least understand how these are done. You need to understand management. That means communicating with other managers as well as managing your own resource. As you can see, there is a lot of skill sets required of a product manager. I essentially needs to be a Superman. So here is a good way to understand the different parts of the skill sets, and it's almost impossible for any one person to excel in every one of them. So a spider chart here lists where a focus would be, and depending on your product manager focus, you can be a builder, a product builder. So you need to understand how to extract what is needed in the product and influence people to build it. You need to be an architect that can understand the strategy behind the product and also be able to understand the business side of it. Then you can be a manager to manage the customers as well as the developers, or the leader who influence the different people and direct different strategies. We can identify product manager archetype into three different archetypes: a technologist, a generalist, or a business-oriented niche. So let's listen to this
Product
video.
managers should not be technical. Who is meant to be technical? It's the people that are doing the technical work. The core of a product manager is actually like, how do we have good discourse? How do we ask the right questions? I would argue that you need to have a way to talk about the trade-offs of these technical topics. But you, as a product manager, should not be making technical decisions. That's not your job. I wouldn't necessarily say that you have to be an expert at something like statistics to be able to work well with a data scientist, right?
So his understanding is you have to be a generalist to be a product manager, but that's not the only point of the only perspective of what a product manager is.
When you're doing product management at a news organization compared to a place like Facebook is just how different the definition of impact can be. When I was at Facebook, we were incredibly focused on scale, engagement, and revenue. At a company like the New York Times, we also have a huge ambition to grow our subscriber base, but our impact and our business goals are in service of our mission, which is to seek the truth and help people understand the world, not the other way around. And that means that impact for us is growing subscribers, but it's also when a deeply reported story triggers an important policy change or a new law. You're also trying to help stories find their real audience in ways that trigger just this whole different side of mission and purpose-driven impact. And I didn't feel that when I was at a place like Facebook.
So also understand the perspective from different companies. We are from CSIS, and we assume you work in Facebook, Google, Microsoft, and there is a definition of what product manager needs to be from that point of view. But you also have the New York Times, you have banks, you have other dimensions or in other domains that will focus on different parts of the product management skills. So those are business oriented as well as the technologist part. Here is another perspective of what a product manager's skills and maturity needs to be in these 6 different areas. So you can see the product manager's work is to be a Superman. You need to be a master of all the skill sets here. Product management grid gives you a good understanding of the different focus in doing product management. So you can start off with what to build, the problem space. Here you are the user experience, user research focus, empathizing with the user, the customer, understanding the market and where the problem is, what are the gaps, and doing market research and all that in order to know what to build. You write up functional requirements or you understand all the problems that needs to be solved. Then you build them. And this part is where the developer comes in. You will be the development manager. You don't actually should build them, otherwise you would be you will run out of resource. You'll be delaying the rest of the thing. So you delegate, you outsource, you understand, you make sure that the development agile iterative project schedule is similar to your roadmap. So all the storyboards and deadlines are mapped down to your strategy in your roadmap. Then you need to know how to grow. You can build and you can understand this, but you keep changing the empathy. So being able to grow, being able to understand what are the resources that needs to be efficiently used to get profitability is a major focus of the assurance space. And not only to grow, but continue to grow, to keep growing. And this is where the flywheel space comes in. And you need to know which product works well with others and how to synergize them, and also when to sunset a product. In the product life cycle, there are different focus depending on the stages of maturity of the life cycle of the product. In the early phase of the product, you need to be a subject matter expert. In the growth phase, you need to be able to grow them. You need to be able to understand how to advertise, how to make the product viral, how to let the product lead by itself. And then you need to retain in a cash cow situation to continue to profit out of the product. And finally, you need to have to pivot and continue or revitalize or change completely the product so that it will meet with the newer time and competition and environment. So in the product life cycle planning, there are different parts of it, and as a product manager, you need to understand where your product lies in this product life cycle. So take, for example, Caro. When they first started, they were a used car sales company. As they grow, they add more product into their chain, and they become a showroom anywhere. During the COVID time, they do leasing, and they also do financing, insurance, and even maintenance, auto care. So in a big company like Google, there are many products, and some products fail and some products succeed. So as a innovation in a product company such as Google, you will have to take risks, and you have to understand where is the next trend going to be and how to excel in those trends. Hopefully you can create product that can lead by itself to grow. Figma is a good example of that. So in a product that has product-led growth, it would have a good market fit that satisfies the customer's need or a group's need, a gap that is not being fulfilled. And that growth is done through the different viral user, and usually that will help with a little bit of marketing. And the business model need to be adapted to help this growth and change as you go along in the growth phase. So the marketing as well handled by the lead of the product growth. And you can look at different products here like Sketch, Figma, Adobe XD, and InVision, and some products are declining while other products are exponentially growing. When you build a product, you need to know how the product is being built by the development team. So this is a good video that shows the product ownership part.
Here's Pat. She's a product owner. She has a product vision that she's really passionate about. She doesn't know the details of what her product is going to do, but she knows why we're building the product, or what problem it's going to solve, and for whom. She talks about it all the time. Here are the stakeholders. They're the people who are going to use and support or in any way be affected by the system being developed. Pat's vision is that these people here will love our system and use it all the time and tell their friends about it. The stakeholder needs and Pat's ideas are expressed as user stories here. For example, if this was a flight booking system, people need to be able to search for a flight, and maybe that would be one user story. Both Pat and the stakeholders have lots of ideas, so Pat helps turn these into concrete user stories. Now, somebody has to actually build a system. So here they are, a small, co-located, cross-functional, self-organizing development team. Since this is an agile team, they don't save up for a big bang release at the end. Instead, they release early and often. In this case, they usually release about 4 to 6 stories per week. So that is their capacity. Capacity is easy to measure. Just count the number of stories released per week. Some stories are big, so they count as 2. Some are small and count as a half. But all in all, it adds up to about 4 to 6 stories per week. Some people call these story points, but I'm just going to call them stories per week. In order to maintain this pace and not get bogged down by manual regression testing, the team invests heavily in automated testing and continuous integration. So every story has at least one automated acceptance test at the feature level, and most of the code has automated unit tests. The problem is, here are a bunch of stakeholders asking for all kinds of stuff, and they sure aren't going to be limited to 4 to 6 ideas per week. They have lots of ideas and lots of wishes, and every time we deliver something to them, they'll get even more ideas and ask for even more stuff. So what happens if we try to please them, try to do everything they ask for? We'll get overflow. Suppose the team starts working on 10 news stories per week. If the input is 10 and the output is 4 to 6, the team will get overloaded. That will cause multitasking, demotivation, and all kinds of bad stuff. And ultimately, it'll lower output and lower quality. It's a lose-lose proposition. It's kind of like trying to shove more paper into a printer to make it print faster, or shoving more cars onto an already crammed highway system. It just doesn't work. It just makes things worse. So what do we do about this? Well, the Scrum and XP way of avoiding this problem is called yesterday's weather. The team says, well, the past few weeks, we've finished 4 to 6 features per week. So which 4 to 6 features shall we build this week? And the product owner's job is to figure out of all possible stories in the whole universe, which 4 to 6 stories shall we deliver next? The Kanban way is to limit work in progress, or limit WIP, W-I-P. Suppose the team decides that 5 is the optimal number of stories to be worked on simultaneously. They've learned that that's just enough to keep everybody busy without causing overload. So they decide that 5 is their WIP limit. Whenever they finish one story, they'll accept one new story, thereby making sure that they never break the limit of 5 ongoing stories. Both of these approaches work fine, in the sense that the team will have just enough work to do and they'll be able to work fast and effectively. A side effect, though, is that there will be a queue forming in front of the team. And that queue in Scrum is called a product backlog. The queue needs to be managed. Suppose stakeholders keep asking for 10 new stories every week, and the teams deliver 4 to 6 stories every week. That means the queue will just keep getting longer and longer, right? So before you know it, you have a 6-month-long wish list in the backlog, and growing. That means that on average, every story that the team delivers is something that somebody asked for 6 months ago. How agile is that? So there's really only one way to stop the queue from getting out of control, and that word is no. It is the most important word for product owner, and Pat practices it every day in front of the mirror. Saying yes to a new feature request is easy, especially if it only means adding it to an ever-growing backlog. The most important job for product owner is to decide what not to build, and take the consequences of that decision. And that's why it's hard, of course. The product owner decides what goes in and what goes out. The product owner also decides the sequencing. What do we build now? What do we build later? And how long does this list actually need to be? That is a hard job, so Pat doesn't do it alone. She does it in collaboration with the team and the stakeholders. To be able to prioritize, the product owner must have some idea of the value of each story, as well as the size. Some stories are critically important, and others are just bonus features. And some stories take just a few hours to build, and others take months. Now, guess what the correlation is between story value and story size? That's right, none. Bigger doesn't mean better. Think of any system that you've used, and I bet you can think of at least one really simple feature that is very important, that you use every day, and I bet you can think of at least one huge complicated feature that is totally unimportant. Value and size is what helps Pat prioritize intelligently. Like here, these two stories are roughly the same size, but have different value, so build this one first. And over here, these two stories have roughly the same value, but different size, so build this one first, and so on. Okay, that sounds easy enough, but wait a sec, how does she know the value of a story? And how does she know the size? Well, here's the bad news. She doesn't. It's a guessing game. And it's a game that everyone is involved in. Pat continuously talks to stakeholders to find out what they value. and she continuously talks to the team to find out what they think is big or small in terms of implementation effort. These are relative guesses, not absolute numbers. I don't know what this apple weighs, or that strawberry, but I'm pretty sure that the apple weighs at least 5 times as much, and that the strawberry tastes better, to me at least. And that's all Pat needs to know in order to prioritize the backlog. It's pretty cool that way. At the beginning of a new project, our guesses will inevitably suck. But that's okay, the biggest value is really in the conversations rather than in the actual numbers. And every time the team delivers something to real users, we learn something and get better at guessing both value and size. That's why we continuously prioritize and estimate. Trying to get it all right from the beginning is pretty dumb because that's when we know the least. So the feedback loop is our friend. Prioritization is not enough though. In order to deliver early and often, we need to break the stories down into bite-sized pieces, preferably just a few days of work per story. We want this nice funnel shape with small clear stories at the front and more vague stories at the back. By doing this breakdown in a just-in-time fashion, we can take advantage of our latest insights about the product and user needs. All this stuff I've been talking about, estimating the value and size of stories, prioritizing, splitting, all that is usually called backlog grooming. Pat runs a backlog grooming workshop every Wednesday from 11 to 12. 1 hour per week. The whole team is usually there, and sometimes a few stakeholders as well. The agenda varies a bit, but sometimes it focuses on estimation, sometimes on splitting stories, and sometimes on writing acceptance criteria for a story, etc. So I hope you're noticing the theme here. Communication. Product ownership is really all about communication. When I ask experienced product owners what it takes to succeed, they usually emphasize passion and communication. So it's no coincidence that the first principle of the Agile Manifesto is individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So the product owner's job is not to spoon feed the team with stories. That's boring and ineffective. Pat instead makes sure everybody understands the vision, that the team is in direct contact with stakeholders, and that there is a short feedback loop in terms of frequent deliveries to real users. That way the team learns and can make daily trade-off decisions on their own, so Pat can focus on the big picture. Let's take a look at a few of the trade-offs that need to be made by Pat and the team. First of all, there's a trade-off between different types of value. Early on in a project, uncertainty and risk is our enemy. There's business risk. Are we building the right thing? There's social risk. Can these people build it? And there's technical risk. Will it work on the platform that we want to run it on? Will it scale? And there's cost and schedule risk. Can we finish the product in a reasonable amount of time for a reasonable amount of money? Knowledge can be...
Okay, so there's quite a lot covered here. You can see a product manager needs to be able to communicate, but communicate is too simple a word to use. They need to balance between the needs of the stakeholders who wants things and the developer who builds things but don't want to be overwhelmed. And you can use some kind of scientific calculation on length and cost and value, and it's not easy to estimate this thing, and you can manage your risks on business, social, tech, or cost schedule, and it's not easy to do that. So a product manager needs experience in doing this. So don't expect to graduate and work as a product manager or product owner. It takes a while before you understand all that, not just in development in general, but also understanding the culture, the team that you're working with, the demands of the stakeholders, and the company that you work for. Let's look back at the communication requirement. You need to be able to communicate with various groups of people, the marketing group, the management group, the customers, the operations group, the developers, engineers themselves. So you need to have orchestration skills. You need to be able to balance and trade off between one another. It's easy to say yes, but it's difficult to say no. When you say yes to one group, you might have to say no to another group. So you need to be able to influence without authority. You can be an explorer, analytical, a challenger, or evangelist. And you need to manage conflict. You need to help solve problem and compromise and negotiate between skills. And hopefully we will get some product manager to share with you their experience of how to negotiate, how to give first and then ask later. And here is where we go back to the beginning, where you need to understand business, customer, and technology. Next is the project proposal. In this class, you will need to produce a product. And in your product, you need to come up with a product that you are interested in building. This can be a product that you work on in the IDP, a problem that you were trying to solve, and you bring in here. The advantage of doing that is, of course, you don't have to do a lot of the empathy because you have done that in the IDP class. Or forget about that, just work on a project that you have worked on in your CDW or Web 2 class, where you've developed all those things based on a problem that's given to you. That's fine as well. Or you can start a brand new project. Or you look at a company that you're interested in, such as Twitter, Tesla, Zoom, and so on, and go work in the area that they are working on, a trend that is hot, like AI. Or you can have passion in certain things like climate change or community services that you want to work on. So propose a project along any of those lines. So let's listen to some of the project tips and proposals here.
Hey TikTok, do you want to hear a crazy story? I sold everything that I have to raise $100,000 to build a tech startup in Singapore. But how did I decide on this crazy idea? So let me bring you back to when I had to board my 6 pets into pet hotels. During my research, I realized there was no centralized platform for pet owners to find the services they want with confidence and transparency. Most of the websites that I went through were outdated or really difficult to navigate. That was when I thought of building a marketplace like Grab or Airbnb, but for verified pet businesses. So Pocket allows you to book and pay for pet services in a few clicks. But that's not all. We have a lot of other features which I'll share with you in our next video. But will my idea work out? We're going to Pet Expo next week for our beta launch, and I'm really excited to meet pet owners who may share the same problem as I do. Follow me on this journey and I'll keep you updated on our progress.
So you can go search the web and see if Pocket is still out there. And this idea, although sounds really interesting, remember there could be a lot of leakage, which means people can just use it like eBay and then go direct to the customer, or in this case, the vendor themselves. So look at you can work on this and improve it as you go along.
The guys from Airbnb, did they come from the hotel industry? No, they came from outside, and as a consumer thought, hey, why can't we do it better? Did the guys from Uber come from the taxi industry? No. I once looked through the top 100 consumer internet companies, and the one pattern was that most of the people who were very successful had actually not come from that vertical. In the same way that Henry and I had not been in media, thought we could do media different. When I went out to ask people at the Wall Street Journal about my idea, they all said it was a terrible idea because they were too close to it.
Okay, so when you have a bold idea, you need to be very passionate, and you need to be able to have thick skin to, when somebody say no, still drive through it. So I will try to not say no, but I will also be tough and see if you can handle that no thing.
This woman was rejected 100 times. Today, she owns a $40 billion graphic design platform. Meet Melanie Perkins, the co-founder and CEO of Canva. Melanie was born to an Australian teacher and a Malaysian engineer with Filipino and Sri Lankan roots. At 14, she sold handmade scarves to shops and markets in Perth and went on to join the University of Western Australia while teaching design software. While at university, Melanie noticed how difficult it was for students to learn complex design programs like Photoshop. She envisioned a simpler solution that would require no technical experience. So in 2007, she dropped out of college and started Fusion Books with her partner Cliff Obrecht, an online platform to design school yearbooks. They ran the business from her mother's living room, growing it into Australia's largest yearbook publisher. In 2011, investor Bill Tai visited Perth for a startup competition, where Melanie and Cliff pitched their idea for Canva. They met Lars Rasmussen, the co-founder of Google Maps, through Bill Tai, who then introduced them to Cameron Adams, an ex-Google employee. He joined Canva as the chief product officer. After perfecting the MVP for over a year, they launched Canva in 2013. It simplified graphic design, making it accessible to everyone online. Over the next decade, Canva grew rapidly and started taking on giants like Adobe Photoshop and Microsoft Designer. By 2023, it had over 170 million users across 190 countries and was valued at $40 billion. Users have created over 20 billion designs, with 6 billion in 2023 alone. It's now used by 90% of Fortune 500 500 companies like Reddit, Zoom, and PayPal.
So of course, this is a success story, and there are thousands of unsuccess stories. But let's learn from this. You don't have to be in that industry. You do need to be understanding of what the problem is and identify the gap and be able to persevere. That is very important. At a young age, she can continue and also be able to pitch well. And from there, you get contacts, and your contacts, you need to manage them so that you can excel. So Canva, as you all know, is very usable. A lot of our students use them, and the gap is how difficult it is to use something like Adobe Photoshop or all the different suites of tools from Microsoft and Adobe. And if they don't pivot, they tried, but there were so many tools, they have a lot of legacy, whereas Canva, you start from scratch. It helps you deal with that. So it is important. I want to see a lot of you try things out boldly, and I will try to support you as I can.
If you start a company, very simply, you have to know something no one else knows about your business. Otherwise, why are you doing it? And why doesn't it already exist? So the big question is, what do you know that no one else knows about your business? You need to have a unique insight. And we had a very simple unique insight, and it was totally by happenstance. In other words, we randomly rented our home one weekend. And so our unique insight was, it's actually not weird for strangers to stay with other strangers. And you can make a bunch of money, and the people who travel there can save money, have an amazing experience. If people could just experience what we experienced that one weekend, this would be an idea that would spread out in the world.
So that's Airbnb, Brian Chomsky. And when it started, a lot of people say no, but that's a game changer. So be thick skin enough to persevere and continue. As this is a class, we have several constraints. This is a computer science IS class, so your product solution has to be a software solution, and it has to be within the scope of 6 person for 12 weeks, so not too big, or at least you can see a prototype by then. We're going to focus on 3 parts as discussed: the UX, the technology, and the business. So you can focus on any of these 3. Can be a business model, can be a particular AI technology, can be the user feel on how this product is going to be done. Okay. In week 3, you have to submit a product report, and the product report will contain quite a bunch of stuff, including the name, problem space, a low fidelity prototype if you can, or some screenshots, some kind of technology and market research that you have done. So what's required is you have to work with one partner, and you have to submit a proposal 48 hours before week 3. And we might want you to do a pitch on this.
You always have these 4 questions. The first one is it valuable? In other words, will people buy it? Or if they've already bought it, or if it's a free service, will they choose to use it? Second, can they figure out how to use it? That's the usability question. The third is it feasible? Feasibility means, do we know how to actually build this solution? Do we have the skills on the team? Do we have the technology stack available? Do we have enough time? And the fourth is, can this sustain a business? Is it legal? Can we afford to pay for it? Do we have the marketing mechanisms, the sales mechanisms, so that we can effectively get this to market? Product to succeed needs to be valuable, usable, feasible, and viable.
Okay, so at least answer some of those, but if you don't get it, don't worry too much.
Do something you're very passionate about.
Because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. And you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, if you're not having fun doing it, you don't really love it, you're going to give up.
People forget, take any giant company in the world. Nothing large started large. They always started small. And many times they were making something that looked like a toy. It looked like a hobby. It turns out that a lot of breakthrough ideas don't seem breakthrough at the time. They seem crazy, or they seem unserious, or they seem like hobbies. They seem something small. Airbnb started one weekend, and we had this idea. We said, well, what if we just turned our house into a bed and breakfast, or design conference. We did not think Airbed and Breakfast would be a company where 3-4 million people a night would use. We thought it was going to be a way for 3 people. We'd have a cool weekend adventure. We'd go about our lives. And the funny thing is, we thought it would pay the rent while Joe and I at the time thought of the big idea. We kept talking about the big idea. These things all start as unprestigious toys that seem hacked together, and they're only made for you and your friends. That's almost always how it starts.
So please don't wait. You only have 2 weeks from now. So please go just start something quickly.
Pick your move before you're ready. I'll tell you where big dreams go to die.
Tell me.
They go to the planning place, getting ready place, preparing myself. And it's the biggest con job we work on ourselves. There are so many bones of big dreams in that graveyard where people, it's always something that there's always going to be a set of reasons to wait. When are you going to take the risk?
So in class, we will do this proposal quickly just to get started. Hope you enjoyed this class. Let's take a break.